Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, in the last episode, we talked about the need of gently approaching our mind's eye and reviewing things in the past. And I concluded that episode by saying we're going to talk about how we can look into the future. And one of the things that we have covered a lot over our nearly 400 episodes of recording here is that the real secret of life has really not been articulated correctly. It's not the accumulation of the most power. It's not the accumulation of the most money or time. What it is building the best relationships. That's really the secret to being holy, but having really the best life possible. And regardless of how you look at it, it's kind of the unwritten foundation that everyone's at. You know, no one goes into the foundation of a building and goes, oh, that's why it's working. Because no, that's a cool building because of this graphic architecture or whatever, but it wouldn't exist without the foundation. And the foundation being the relationships and how we build them. And we've addressed that at a lot of different angles throughout the years. And what I wanted to talk about today is a specific task, drill, whatever the right terminology is, that I give my clients. And to a certain extent, I'm looking for a peer review to see if it's the right idea and right way to go about this. But since I know it works, I also want to share it with the listeners as well. And if you're able to upgrade it to a 2.0 version, I'm all for that too. So I'm assuming all of us, and I apologize for the assumption, but given the statistics that we have here, that the majority of the audience is listening to us on a smartphone device or a tablet, all of those devices, regardless of who made them, have a version of a voice memo app, something that you can leave, it will record it. Some of them do it with video, some of them do it with sound. That part's not particularly relevant. The point is that you can record a message for the future. And what I invite my clients to do, I have them do this on Fridays. And the reason I have them do this on Fridays is because it's right before the start of the weekend. I have them think about someone that they care about, that they want to have the relationship still exist at least 10 years from now. Tends to work better with younger people, specifically those who are younger than college, but nonetheless, a relationship that you still want to exist at least 10 years from now. And you pick a milestone that is in the future. And that's why younger than college or high school is great, because you can select the graduation thereof. And these are things I would like you to know then. And what I invite people to do is to talk to that person as if they are at that day. I get it can be weird. Your kid's 12 years old now. I'm going to look at him. I'm going to leave a conversation like they are when they're 22 and graduate from college. But what I have found is that the act of knowing you're going to do that weekly and then actually doing the recording itself creates so much value in terms of the way that you approach them today. In the sense that you are thinking about what they will be and what you want your relationship to be with them 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever the case may be. And without ever consciously knowing how or specifically going out and buying the blueprint of building how to make this road, everyone's road in these specific relationships get better. And I bring that up because that's essentially the drill that I give people to do. And I give them 20 minutes again on Fridays, weekly to do this. Some of them do a different person each week. You know, the first grandson's the first Friday, the second grandson's the second Friday, so on and so forth. But the point being is that what I have found with my clients that actually do this is just like how the teacher can tell, by the way, if you did your homework or not, for all of us students who just thought we could walk up and do an oral exam without ever writing the paper. You actually can tell. You see them going through and growing. And Father, I bring this up for multiple reasons. First is that is this a good idea? Is there a way to do it better? And is this something I should be telling people, or is this a dangerous thing to do? So those are essentially my starting point to make sure we're in a good spot here, and then how to better implement this in our lives.
And let me make sure that I got the main pieces of that. So the proposal is a weekly message to a person that we would plan on doing for the indefinite future.
So you have a son who just started second grade now. You leave a message for them, regularly. Maybe for, like I said, if you have 4 kids, I'm gonna make this easier because there's 4 weeks in a month. You do one kid the first Friday, second kid the second Friday, so on and so forth. So once a month, you are leaving a specific message for that person that they will receive on whatever date you choose. Again, I pick milestones because it's easier for us to identify, graduating from high school, graduating from college, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. I have a certain version of that my own mother made for me. Certainly some early memories. It's funny apparently I started walking at about 9 months, and my mother described in this little journal how I would, my head was quite large, and so I fall forward, and she thought she was afraid I'd have a permanent goose egg on my forehead the rest of my life because I kept face planting in my efforts to walk, which were oriented, interestingly, to keeping up with my brother, trying to follow after my brother, who's 4 years older than I am. And seems that set a trend that continued for many decades in my life, interestingly. So, yeah, those milestones. Sometimes we talk about time capsules, right? And recording those messages that will go into the future. And how does that orient our hearts in acknowledging where a person is in light of where we dream that they might be? We're anticipating what that future life might look like for them. So when we record the message now, we don't imagine that the person is going to be a kind of a drug addict in jail or something like that. We have positive views of the person, and the way that we are acknowledging their life now maybe is already with that positive view of the future. Makes me think a little bit of Jordan Peterson's suite of self-authoring tools. He talks about past authoring, present authoring, and future authoring. He's talking about doing that in terms of ourselves, which is an interesting adjustment to what you're proposing. Can I write my own future? Can I write a message to myself, kind of in light of where I hope I will be or am aiming at in my life? And that's another sort of interesting twist on that. But I think it's a beautiful gift for sure. I mean, when somebody actually takes that time to think about us and offer a reflection on our life, again, I think we're presuming this in a positive context, not like I'm going to offer a critique of someone's life or a critical analysis of somebody's life on a weekly basis for the next X number of years, and then I'm going to dump it on them when they graduate from college or something. I think we're talking about this in terms of a positive reflection, an honest but a loving reflection, I guess I should say, not simply a positive for the sake of being positive, but the reflection from love. And then for a person to discover at that milestone how they've been seen and how their life has grown through the eyes of another is, I think a beautiful gift at that point.
Yeah, and one of the things that, because I invite people to not, these aren't like 2-minute conversations. They're meant to be, at least 5, but can go on as long as you want. Again, I block off 30 minutes for them to be able to do this. Is it kind of becomes like a stream of consciousness. And I've had a lot of different people tell me, I start the conversation with like one particular idea or whatever. And then next thing I know, I'm sharing things that are going on today that I wish that they would know about. There ends up being things that, like, I wish someone told me this, and whatever the case may be, but it's related to whatever the initial topic that they wanted to share was. And sometimes they're serious, sometimes they're not. I mean, it all depends upon, who it is and your own starting point. And knowing that there's no wrong way to do this, I have, because that's how I tell everyone in terms of the instructions. I have found that what you just articulated of it ending going to a loving and nurturing and generally positive direction is pretty much the always. It's not even the norm. It's what ends up happening when you do this exercise. And again, I cheated. I put it on Friday. And the reason is because most of the time you're going to spend some time with this person in their current state after you have just visualized them in this state downfield of life. And what I found, and this might be just me cherry picking my clients, I totally I'm telling this outright that I haven't tested this on a massive sample scale or anything like that. But what I have found is over time, problems and barriers that used to be insurmountable for the individual themselves who's doing this exercise, not for the child at this point, just stop occurring. And I'm teaching people how to change their life through a new career path, which is sales, which is scary. And there are scary things you have to ask them about money and talk about buying something from me. All things which can be very scary for someone who's never been in it. But all of these fears, concerns, whatever, erode over time. So I bring this up to say that I really think it's a very positive exercise for people to do. I'm not sure I ever brought it up on an episode before with you, Father. So I apologize if this is a repeat conversation. And I'm very glad that you're telling me that this is not a dumb idea and I'm hurting people. It's a starting point, just because because I always leave the possibility that it might only work because I'm the one who's doing it, and I might have some special way of turning on my car that I can't really articulate, kind of like riding a bike. Like, I just know what I do and I can't describe it. I leave that as a possibility. I also leave as possibilities like I have no idea what I'm doing and I just got lucky. The fluking into that. And that's why I ask you, Father, because this is your world more than mine for sure. You're an expert.
Yeah, I can't say I've thought about what this would be like so much. So I'm thinking a little bit off the top of my head, but um, yeah, I do wonder if it depends on, you are a very you have a very healthy emotional life, and you're a very healthy person relationally, and you have a kind of a self-assurance and a positive attitudes towards life that I do think matters. I wonder if people who, there may be a tipping point there, that somebody whose life is a little bit more painful, person that's maybe a little bit more melancholic, a person who might be, a little bit more predisposed to see the life as half empty, the glass is half empty rather than half full. If there may be some things that tilt the exercise in a different direction, but I think it's beautiful what you're sharing from your experience of advising clients to do this, that it tends to tilt more in the half full direction, and it helps them to get a little bit more perspective. I do think the process of just thinking about someone else in a dedicated way for a period of time, in your week, is pretty helpful. It's a way of getting out of ourselves and looking at someone else's life and and I think we are oriented to do that in a loving way. Certainly having that attitude helps. Just to get out of ourselves that way is really valuable. Um, I think that kind of thing happens, if we choose to write a card, probably making out Christmas cards, things like that, where we're oriented towards others, just going out of ourselves and thinking positively about other people, has I would think, a really positive effect on ourselves as well. So, yeah, I think it's a really fun exercise. Like I said, I haven't thought about it so much or explored it to imagine if maybe there would be some other things that could come up in particular situations that would be less helpful, but seems really beautiful.
So let me answer that part you meant. First off, thank you for what you said about me. Um, I've just one my specific clients came to thought there. He's relatively pessimistic and super introverted. So I don't know if that's the same as melancholy, but in my head, that kind of was like the connection I saw. And I'm not
Close
saying
enough.
he's doing cartwheels and being super outgoing or anything like that. But what I have found was that the pessimism went away, and now it's much more, rather than just being negative for the sake of being negative, it's based in reality. Now, granted, he still doesn't think that instantly just because he shows up everything's going to work out perfectly, but at least now it's based in reality, instead of just a starting point of woe is me. I can say this, and one of the other benefits that come out of this is for the person who's actually going to be receiving it, is that they're going to see you if you're doing it in video, or hear your voice, regardless which one you do, of how you are in this moment in time. And one of the things that when we think about our childhood looking back, obviously we know our parents intellectually were younger when we were younger. But for some reason, it's almost like when you see Art of Mary, like when you see pictures of Mary, she's almost always the same age. And when we look back at our parents in childhood, we tend to put them in like isolated like categories, like my entire high school experience. This is what my parents look like. Well, obviously that's not the case, but that's how our mind does things. And having the opportunity in both sound or video, if that's what you want to do, puts more into the relationship looking back at it. And it's a way of really saying, hey, you know, dad might that talk about your son who's listening. His dad might not be explicitly saying the problems he's going through today in 2024, but I can relate more to him because now that I'm listening to this is a closer in age that I think I can get it more. Um, it's a really powerful tool for the person who will be receiving that. And again, what I instruct people who don't know what to talk about on a particular day is just tell them something that you wish you knew when you were 18, but you can't tell them now because they're too young. Some examples are being, why you freaked out the first time they brought a date home, why you thought that was the worst fit ever, or what you wanted them to learn from an experience and why you acted a certain way. So when you fell down, instead of me immediately coming over and wiping all the blood away, I wanted you to learn, you got to keep your balance first before we start going down the hill and jumping over all the rocks. We got to learn how to keep our balance on the bike. Whatever the case may be, life will provide you the answers. But I give that as examples. And again, to recap the exercise, it is to take out a recording device inside, or a recording program inside any of your electronic devices, and regularly, I recommend on Fridays, leave a message for someone that you want to have a relationship at least 10 years from now, and talk to them whenever they are that age. Whether the person is currently 90 or the person is currently 9, that part's not relevant, but leave that message for them consistently. And then obviously once that point comes, give them the playlist, and it will be all of the benefits that Father and I just discussed here. So Father, if there are any final thoughts that you have for this episode, I certainly would like to share it with the audience before we do our send off.
Do you do maybe a shorter version? It seems like you know, it's a big investment to start doing this weekly with no kind of experience of
Mhm.
the turnaround. Do you do a couple, try it for a couple of months and then share it with the person, or
With adults, yes, but not with children.
uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah. It does make a difference. There are some people that have done this for anniversaries, for example, and it was by far the best. It was better than the diamond earrings you bought.
Yeah.
Putting in time each week meant more than the
Yeah.
sparkly diamonds. So it does. So yeah, it does work. We've seen it turn around. Yes.
That's beautiful. No, I really appreciate that. I've often thought and have done for a long time, especially as I entered into the monastery and didn't have a source of income to buy gifts, that just writing a card to express my appreciation of a person, what I love particularly about them, becomes a great gift. And this is an expansion of that idea um, by many times. And so, yeah, maybe our listeners can think about that, even for something that might be a couple of months off, to record weekly for the next 8 weeks or something before a birthday or an anniversary, to see what that experience is like, and then expand that over the course of years for children, etc. It's really beautiful.
Yes, it is. It's remarkable, and knowing that there's no wrong answers. This is you and your relationship with that person. And a lot of times you're able to share things that, sometimes we put these barriers. I need to have the perfect moment to have this conversation. This is the
Mm,
perfect moment. Every time
that's
you're
right.
doing one of these recordings, it's that. And it's one of those things I certainly invite people to try and do. And like everything else that we've taught people to do, when you're doing something that's going to help your relationships in one capacity, it has a ripple effect, not just throughout your own life, which it certainly does, but in the society and your other relationships as well, and their relationships thereafter. It's a remarkably positive
Mm,
thing. And that's why we
mhm.
invite you to try it, and why we tell people all these great things that we're discussing and I'm taking in the real life trial and erroring, and they make a difference. Take them into your life. You can learn from a guinea pig without being one. And I'm more than glad to be yours in this category. So we thank you all for listening, and we will be with you again next week.